Donc, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Day 25 of the federal election
On
campaign,
est en
and
direct,
the French
tout le
language
monde.
leaders debate starts right now.
Bonsoir.
Tonight, who will score points? Who will
they're
convince you?
translating it?
Who will reassure you? Who will inspire you? Welcome to the Federal Leaders Debate 2025.
I don't even get to translate it in real time. I want to hear what they actually have to say, not that I don't trust.
This election is the most important of our lives. We will never be an American state, ever. The U.S. threat is huge, but there are other issues at stake. We choose Quebec. Donald Trump has attacked our country. We have to defend our workers.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Live
coverage from Maison Radio-Canada in Montreal. This is the Leaders Debate 2025 with Patrice Roy.
Bonsoir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
How do we want this?
Welcome to the French Leaders Debate. We are joined by Mark Carney, leader of the Liberal Party, Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party, Yves-François Blanchet, leader of the Bloc Québécois, and Jug Meetian, leader of the New Democratic Party. Good evening to all four of you.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 6 p.m. in a few seconds?
No, it's 6 p.m. now.
This important event has been moved forward to give as many people as possible the opportunity to tune in without missing a decisive moment for another one of our passions, hockey. And by the
they
way,
rescheduled it because of
I'll
hockey?
go off script here for a few seconds and say that the Montreal Canadiens, you'd better win. I also would like to say that the leaders' invitations were managed by the Leaders' Debates Commission, and the podium places on the set were designated at random. But the questions, subjects, and editorial choices are ours. I'll be managing speaking time fairly, within
I'm a little
fair
disappointed.
limit.
I thought I was going to be the one
There are
translating
5
it.
themes tonight. Obviously, the trade war with the United States, the cost of living, energy and climate, immigration and foreign affairs, and finally, identity and sovereignty. And I'll also have a few rapid-fire questions at the end of the debate. This debate is your debate this evening. You will be free to speak as much as possible. The only rule that I ask of you is not to speak at the same time. If you start talking over one another, I'll ask Pascal, our sound engineer, to turn off your mics. So let the debate begin, or I was going to say good game. So we'll move on to our first opening question. You'll have
Does everybody like this format? I will not translate. I'll just do this.
This election, according to many, has been hijacked by Trump. So to assert our sovereignty early in this debate, I'll ask you to name 2 things you'd put forward, concrete things that will change the lives of Canadians, but that have nothing to do with the United States. 45 seconds, Mr. Carney, you're first.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Leroy. And I'd like to thank everyone watching at home for joining us tonight. And I'd like to thank the other leaders for your service to Canada. 2 things that don't include Mr. Trump. First of all, we need to double the rhythm of construction of new homes here in Canada.
10 years in power.
That's
After
absolutely
10 years in
fundamental.
power.
And the second thing, we need to promote and strengthen our cultural institutions in Canada.
Justin Trudeau said that Canada has no core identity.
45 seconds, Mr. Poilievre. 2 things that you would promise Canadians to change their lives that have nothing to do with the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, and thanks to my colleagues for being here today. Clearly, life is no longer affordable. The promise of an affordable life is broken. I have a plan to make life more affordable by cutting taxes by 15%. That's one thing that will reward work for the middle class and for seniors who've already worked. Second thing, we're going to scrap the GST on new houses, and we're going to incentivize cities to reduce their taxes too, so that our young people can save up to $100,000 on a new home and restore the promise of Canada.
Mr. Blanchet.
I would like to come back to something that I do all year long, First of all, thank you for having welcomed us.
Why is he
I've been waiting
British?
for this moment for a long time. I'd like to insist on two things for Quebec that I was talking about before the Trump crisis is Quebec's right to have a different and open economy, open to the world, based on its own natural resources, on its own attachment to a green economy, but also Quebec's right to be different, to have a different language, to have a different culture, to have different values, to have different immigration models that need to succeed. These are elements that should always have been mentioned, but that have a particularly new sense with this new crisis.
Great. Mr. Singh, 45 seconds. Two things that have nothing to do with the American.
Thank you for the question. Good evening, everybody. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about values. What are the values that underpin the answer to this question?
I
Canadians
loathe
and
Jagmeet
Quebecers
Singh.
like taking care of one another. We come together. That is what we believe in. That is a basic value for us. And this value is embodied in our public health care system, which has nothing to do with the US. And we want our healthcare system to be nothing like the American one. We will expand pharmacare so that everyone can access the medications they need. And I also want to talk about dental care. I also want to expand that program, which owes itself to us.
Thank you. I'd like to reassure you, Mr. Singh. I think you were disappointed. We are going to talk about health as well, and I'll ask questions about that later. First theme, therefore, obviously, the trade war. Trump is going to be tough. We don't know what's in store with him. I don't think any solution is going to be possible. We always thought they were our ally. It doesn't make sense.
Look at this propaganda that you're
You
getting.
can't reason with him. The
Oh,
government
no.
will have to stand firm, stay firm. We have to put him in his place. Otherwise, he'll destroy us totally.
Destroy us totally.
The answer should be pragmatic. It would be good to pause some of our services to the U.S. They need us. An eye for an eye, no messing around. Get us out of this mess. We need a leader who can make decisions to destabilize Trump and make him respect Canada. What does he plan to do with the new president of the United States?
Guerre commerciale means commercial war.
What do you plan to do with this president? That is the elephant in the room. So for your information, there are 1,073 days left in Donald Trump's term. Why do you think that you are the best person here tonight to negotiate with Mr. Trump? Mr. Polyev, 35 seconds.
First of all, we will never be an American state. We will remain
You're
sovereign.
going to hear all four of these idiots saying
On my
the same
first day
thing.
as Prime Minister, I will restart negotiations to accelerate a deal that will put an end to the tariffs and protect our sovereignty. We can't control Trump, but at the same time, we have to control what we can control. We need to reverse liberal economic policies that have weakened our country. We need to unleash our resources, cut taxes, and bring jobs back home so that we can face Trump from a position
Well, this is
of
not enough
strength.
time for anybody to answer a bloody question.
All right. Well, first of all, in a crisis, you have to plan for the worst possible situation, and you have to have a plan to build
Sounds like
a
Donald
strong
Trump's plan.
economy here in Canada. And we need to react with strength. And those are the elements that will allow us to succeed with Mr. Trump. He respects strength. He respects people who understand how the world works and who understand how the private sector works. And Canada needs to create other options, new, reliable partnerships around the world, and that's what I'll do.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Mr. Blanchet.
This is all vapid rubbish.
Trump will hang from his own noose because their economy is dependent on ours.
He will hang from his own
But there will be a
noose.
lot of harm done to Canada, to Europe, to Mexico before then. We have to realize that our joint GDP is bigger than the States. Our population is bigger than the States. And so retaliation is going to hurt the States, but we have to negotiate in a rational way, and we shouldn't fall to fear, and we shouldn't spin fear.
Mr.
for
Singh.
political
Nobody has
reasons.
said anything thus
Conclusions?
far.
It's all
Une
about
question de
priorities. For me, now is the time to invest, not cut. It is the time to protect what we hold dear, our farmers, our culture, the French language. These things should not be sacrificed. It is time to defend who we are, what our values are, and we believe in helping one another.
This is the second time he
That's
said
what
that.
we will do.
Jugmeat is the
How?
biggest
We will
idiot on the
strengthen our
planet.
healthcare system. We will not let it be Americanized. That is crucial. We must defend who we are.
So
We
open
must
debate
defend
to
who
begin
we
now
are.
for about 15 minutes. Mr. Poiliev, you have called Carney a political grifter, a
Good.
globalist banker
Good.
who's deconnected from reality. And Mr. Carney, you've said Pierre Poilievre is a career politician who knows nothing about how the real world works. So I ask you the question, which of you first is capable of standing up to Donald Trump?
Oh my gosh, Trump.
Mr. Poilievre.
Trump.
I am, because I'm going to put Canada first. I will never compromise Canada's interests, and I will control what we can control here. Obviously, no one will be able to control the decisions of Donald Trump.
How about fix
but
the
we can
problems of the
control
liberals? He
our
hasn't talked about the
economy, our
liberals'
domestic
destruction once
economy,
yet.
by
Mr. Poilievre.
overturning liberal economic policies that have weakened our country and made us more dependent on the
The issue
Americans.
is, Mr. Poilievre,
Well,
you would make Canada more like the
That's not
United
true.
States. You would
not true.
Americanize our healthcare system,
not true.
privatize it. Everyone knows that's what conservatives
That's
do.
not
Mr.
true.
Carney, you said that you're better?
all right. First of all, I know how to negotiate. And I agree with Mr. Singh. We need to start by saying what's never going to be on the table. The French language, Quebec's culture, and supply management will never be on the table. Our resources, that's the first thing. Second, in terms of Mr. Blanchet's point, the opportunities that we have with the European Union are there, and I've already started building new relationships with the European Union.
Yeah,
As
the
Prime
European
Minister,
Soviet
I met
Union.
with the President of France.
That's because you're a
and
globalist.
with the President of the European Commission.
There's a lot to unpack in there, let's be honest. And perhaps it's right. You say that you're an expert in managing a crisis, but
It's a crisis
you're a
of your own
negotiator,
making.
But, well, perhaps negotiating with tax havens. But when it comes to trade agreements,
There
I
you
haven't
go.
seen the proof. We apparently have to believe you with no political experience. And so I find it's kind of funny because people say we have to unite and work together. On the one hand, you have never spoken to me before this evening.
Huh, I like this guy already.
You're not trying to figure out how to collaborate between equals, Quebec, Canada, Mexico, European partners. You're trying to score divisive points that only serves the United States of America.
All right.
He moved his companies to the
just
U.S.
Started
How about
as
say
Prime
that?
Minister. I've been Prime Minister for a month. In the first
You've
week,
been advising the Prime Minister for 5 years.
signed an agreement with the premiers of all the provinces, the Premier of Quebec and the premiers of all the provinces and territories concerning free trade within Canada. It's also an agreement that deals with trade corridors. That's an example. That's an
You
example.
haven't sat with any premiers. You've sat with MPs.
Why
that
is
will be
Yves
elected at the
Blanchet
same level of you if you're
doing
elected.
Poilievre's
The
work here?
problem, Mr. Carney, is that your party has been in power for 10 years.
There you go.
And in that time,
You've done nothing but destroy Canada.
it's not meetings that are going to change things. It's your policies that have blocked resources. C-69, which blocks not just pipelines, but also dams, mines, and liquid
Destroyed
natural
Canada.
gas exploration. We have a deal with Europe, a trade deal. The Conservatives negotiated it, but liberal legislation has prevented development, and you continue to support those laws. Those laws need to be repealed and replaced with laws that will unleash our resources and allow us to export abroad and allow us to become truly economically
We'll
and
talk about that later.
sovereign and
In a war,
have
you need
energy
to determine
sovereignty
your
as well.
priorities. Mr. Carney, unfortunately, your priority is, well, you had time to meet with the king, but you did not increase
Jugmeat is such
the
a
amount of money people
scumbag.
receive when they lose their jobs due to the trade war.
Dude, they
These
lost
days,
their
people
jobs before the
receiving
trade
EI
war.
get maybe half of their salary. For people who have already lost their jobs, that is not enough. It won't cover the bills. It won't cover their rent costs. That shows your priorities. For me, workers are number one. We need a system to support our workers.
By the way,
We'll hear some in a few seconds. But
Carney
Mr.
thought
Carney,
he was going to get on Jugmeat's
response, and
side
then I
by
have another question
flattering
for
him. Jugmeat,
Blanchet.
the
First of
scumbag,
all,
stabs everyone in the back.
We need to fight in a trade war. We need to fight with counter tariffs. And all the money collected from our counter tariffs will go directly to workers and the businesses that are the most affected by this trade war. They won't be used for tax cuts the way that Mr. Poilievre is going to do.
You always want to increase them. You're liberal. We want to cut
just
taxes
started as Prime Minister
for a
and
fourth liberal term.
I've just started.
You were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. Have you forgotten that?
Honestly, let me cut in here.
Clip it.
Both of them
There you go. Clip that.
cut taxes for billionaires and millionaires. They have already done it in the past. Your first step was to reduce taxes for the millionaires. Pierre Poilievre would do the same thing.
That's not
You're
true.
not thinking of regular people.
We've cut the consumer carbon
Great.
tax. That's what
Mr.
we
Singh,
did.
Yeah, you've
Mr.
cut
Blanchet,
your consumer carbon tax, the one that
you're
your stupid Liberal Party
telling Canadians
imposed.
for several days that it would be better to have a minority government. You said it clearly. With Trump, can Canadians not want a majority government that's stronger?
I don't know where that reasoning comes. The minority government would be weaker than a majority government. Go tell that to the Germans, who have only governed through coalitions recently. Many countries have coalitions, and if that is the population of the people, then great. At this point, it's possible that Canadians and Quebecers, perhaps, choose to trust in someone who has the least experience in politics. Quebec has a different economy, different interests, different everything.
Different everything.
We want a parliament where our economic difference is taken into account.
Let's talk a little bit about
Mr. Singh,
minority
in terms of the minority
governments.
government,
The whole point of a minority government is to help people, to make a difference in people's lives. But honestly, Mr. Blanchet, unfortunately, in the last minority government, you showed that you were as useless
Jugmeat's
as the
just
monarchy
burning
is.
bridges with everybody here.
You did nothing for people. What is worse, you voted against measures that would help Quebecers. Dental care, pharmacare. These are measures that have helped hundreds of thousands of Quebecers.
Quebec jurisdiction, dental
Exactly.
care, health care,
People in Quebec,
pharmacare,
people
money
in
that we
Quebec,
send to Ottawa. Ottawa does not have the expertise or the jurisdiction.
we are
Quebec
paying their
does.
bills.
Mr. Roy,
Please let me finish one sentence.
please wrap it up.
When we want to be effective, we give the money to the experts, those who have the legal jurisdiction to spend the money, and that is Quebec in this case. The NDP gave $2 billion to a
We are
insurance company.
giving
Everything was
money to our
going
Quebec seniors.
fine until now, but Mr. Carney, in terms of the minority government,
Mr. Roy, we are in a crisis, the most serious crisis of our lives. We need to react with resounding, overwhelming strength. Yes, we need to cut a few taxes. Yes, we need to cut bureaucracy. But the government needs to act in a time of crisis. So we need to have a government ready to act.
But when you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, you weakened our economy. We need economic sovereignty, and that means bringing back production to Canada. And I would reverse Liberal policies around development. I would expedite construction permits. We would have pre-approved permits. And that I would also make sure that we could send our energy to Europe to break Europeans' dependence on Putin, and to break our dependence on the U.S.
Conservatives and the liberals both prioritize the ultra-rich, not you.
Shut up already.
We have a
Jesus.
segment on energy and pipelines, so we'll come back to that later. There are people who are watching us who are concerned. There will be negotiations with the Americans, obviously. Well, you'll all say supply management here, but I'd like to say that Canada gave up market shares during the last 3 trade deal negotiations. We're talking about more than 450 million a year in losses for Canadian farmers. So what is something you wouldn't concede in a
I
negotiation?
will defend supply management. I will defend the French language. I will defend our healthcare system. I will defend our decisions and our laws. We will always be sovereign. And the way we're going to restore that sovereignty, Canadian sovereignty, is by making our economy stronger. We need to cut red tape by 25% for businesses. We need to reduce development charges, taxes on housing. We need to support labor and energy and domestic production. That's how we can be more sovereign.
Supply management. Well, go around the table, Mr. Carney.
In the face of the U.S.
It's nice to say supply management, but we've said it 3 times and it hasn't been done. So.
Well, this is the first time that I will be at the table if I'm elected as Prime Minister. I've said a number of times, and since the beginning of my campaign in Mauricie, we'll never touch supply management. We won't put Quebec culture or the French language on the table. And I think we all agree on that point. And that's important. We have to be very clear from the beginning when talking to the Americans.
Be very clear. Got to be clear.
That we don't agree on is that Pierre Poilievre would cut our healthcare system. You said it, everyone knows it. You said that you want to cut. You would cut dental care.
Not true.
Pharmacare. You called them bad ideas. And unfortunately, Mr. Carney's plan to budget the operating budget in 3 years would lead to $43 billion
worth of cuts. We'll talk about that in the next
cuts.
segment. Cost of living, we'll talk about tax cuts later and choices, and we will underscore that none of you has tabled a costed plan. These are just promises. Mr. Blanchet on supply
We have
management.
tabled a program, first of all. Second of all, we are not the ones who decide what's on the table. If Mr. Trump says, I want to talk about this, no one will be able to stop him from at least talking about it. We've never sacrificed the principle of supply management. So it's empty words. Little bits have been sacrificed every single time at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars every single time. All Mr. Trump wants is
Safe borders.
Wave of Wisconsin milk with hormones, with no protection against
So
antibiotics.
what would you do
The hell is he talking about?
concretely?
We will bring back an act that everyone approved. The Liberals before Carney approved it. Everyone had approved it, but then there were certain intrigues with unelected senators. There's a number of unelected
And
members of
law
Parliament that
would
seem to
prevent-
be making decisions.
This format is very annoying.
what would protect you better?
Are these translations even any good?
They're pretty good. I was listening to the French
But
side.
my
They're
point-
pretty good.
My point is that we need to invest in Canada. Our plan, which will be unveiled this weekend, will catalyze $500 billion of investment
He always repeats
in
things
Canada
twice. It's amazing.
over the next 5 years. And that will be important in our negotiations with Mr. Trump.
I'd like us to listen to a worker together from Stellantis. For him, this crisis with the U.S. is very clear. He's just lost his job.
I was laid off by Stellantis because of the trade war with the U.S. How will your government stop Mr. Trump
It's amazing.
from attacking
They
our
focus on people who are laid off
industries
because of the
one by
tariff
one?
war and not people
And
who
how
lost their
will you
livelihoods
protect our
because of the
jobs?
COVID response. What a bunch of propaganda this is. State-funded propaganda.
Concrete measures. How will you help workers? You all have different proposals. Mr. Poilievre.
First of all, I already announced a fund to help companies keep jobs, to keep workers in their jobs, because the priority of workers is to keep working. Secondly, there will be EI to protect people who have fallen on rough times. I will be there for people who've lost their jobs. At the same time, we need to stimulate investment to strengthen our economy and to encourage new companies. We need to unleash our natural resources, and we need to
I'm listening to the translation.
create more jobs in resource
as far as I'm
industries.
concerned, perfectly
We also
accurate.
want to create more jobs for tradespeople at a time when they need work to build
The only
new
problem is you don't
houses.
hear
Let's
the
stay on
inflection in their
workers, Mr. Singh.
voice or their voice. Pierre's French is
If
notably
a business
stronger
wants
than
to sell
Carney's.
cars in
Notably.
Canada, they should be required to have a factory in Canada, a presence in Canada, and I would put this in a law. We are a major market. If you want to sell here, you should create jobs here. And let me add, the first thing Mr. Poilievre said in
Oddly enough,
2022 when he
Jagmeet
became
Singh's
conservative
French is
leader
the strongest
is
of the
that
three
he would
Anglophones.
cut EI contributions. So it is not credible that he would increase support to people when he talked about eliminating
Mr.
contributions.
Blanchet, for workers, you've said you want to go back to a pandemic-style wage subsidy.
The principle of that. We said that even before the campaign. To paraphrase Mr. Poilievre, EI is fairly broken. People have difficulty accessing it, and I disagree with Mr. Carney's suggestion to say that money will be invested in training. You've lost your job, but we're going to train you, and you're going to have another kick at a can at the age of 55. Not a good idea. The idea of the wage
I like Yves Blanchet. He
subsidy
makes the
would-
most sense.
was to allow the worker to have a link to their job by giving them a subsidy so that the employer, should they want to, could rehire them someone who had the skill to do the job. So there would be a transitional period where there could be temporary job losses, like for the case we just heard.
Well, first of all, three things. All the money from our counter tariffs will go directly to workers. Second, we have a strategic fund for manufacturing in Canada, specifically for the auto sector. And third, our counter tariff system for the automotive sector contains an incentive of $7 billion for the automakers to keep production and workers here in Canada. That's very important. But the reason that we've done all of this is so that we can have strong positions to negotiate with Trump.
Just to conclude, I think we need to encourage Canadians to buy Canadian-made cars. And that's why, as long as there are tariffs, we will scrap the GST on cars and trucks that are built here, mainly built here in
That's good,
Canada.
because my next
I think the tariff is a good idea. What allows companies to buy and sell more, then yes, I do agree with that approach.
70%.
Mr. Poilievre copied our idea. We announced the GST lifting for Canadian-made cars before him.
Now, there are a lot of things that are in all of your platforms, so we'll come back to that. Now, 70% of Canadians say that they're buying fewer American products. That's a big number. You leaders, could you please name me one made in USA product that you no longer buy?
Listen to this propaganda.
I buy my own strawberries.
So you don't buy strawberries
I
anymore.
buy Quebec strawberries, and I do my own shopping, by the way.
What products have you not bought,
Well,
Mr. Carney?
No more wine, no more alcohol, no more American alcohol.
He moved his company to America.
I do my own shopping,
Say it, Pierre.
and I cook at home. Lots of products.
Jagmeet Singh drives a
Fruits,
BMW.
There's a lot of Canadian
You
apples.
say
He
you're
owns
making an effort.
Yes,
fancy watches,
I'm making
not
an
made
effort
in Canada.
with apples, other fruit, strawberries.
How the hell did this guy get a
Strawberries.
place on the stage?
Everyone is eating a lot of strawberries these days.
Say it, Pierre. He moved his company to America. I keep my employees in
I
Canada.
bring it up because
Well,
I do my own grocery
I'm in a
shopping,
different
which
position.
Carney does not.
This is a delicious conversation. It's beef in my case. I buy Canadian beef. It's the best beef in the world. But I never buy American strawberries either.
Organic
Okay.
beef
It's
from
like a
Quebec is
circle
not
jerk
bad.
of
Let's,
anti-American
share
nonsense.
some of that
All
someday.
right. It's very beautiful to see. Our next theme is the cost of living.
You know what Pierre should have said? I keep my employees in Canada. No, but we all have to love each other.
We
'cause
can
it's-
manage our
No,
money.
Carney
Oh,
took
we're having a hard
Brookfield
time
Assets
here.
Management.
I hope
to
they'll be able
America.
to balance the budget and maintain the same quality of services.
Canadian beef
Inflation,
is very good. by the
lower
way, but
taxes.
Beef is good.
I earn a good salary, but it's hard to pay for groceries, for childcare for our kid, for everything.
Say it's because of the Trump tariffs.
Education is expensive. Prices keep going up. The middle class is hurting. And for the poor, it's worse.
We should have a Trump counter on screen.
We're getting poorer. I feel like no one really listens to young people on housing or the cost of living.
So you should vote Liberal. Vote Liberal
So
again, you
what
idiot.
does the future hold for us young people?
Well, if you vote Liberal this time around, they'll get
What
it.
does the future hold for young people? I'll give you a few figures here very briefly. I'm sure this won't come as a surprise, but
Well,
in
imagine
Montreal,
asking the
housing
question,
prices
what-
have more than doubled
what do
over
you
10
not
years.
buy from America, and not what do you not
over
buy from China?
$300,000 to $671,000. Remarkable
Idiots.
growth in Toronto and Vancouver as well.
Propagandized
So my question, and you'll have 35
population.
seconds, first of all, how can we improve access to housing, for example, for this young woman that we just heard from?
You
Mr.
should let in
Blanchet?
another 500,000
Clearly,
immigrants.
It's through the starting capital and another GST-based policy. There needs to be access to capital for their down payment. My children can't pay
Access
for
to
a house.
capital?
A lot of them have jobs, good jobs. It's essential that we give them a little boost.
How about
Using
you
public
just
money,
not flood the
for
country with
example.
immigrants?
And it's not during a crisis and that in cutting budgets that we will be able to do so. We need to reduce speculation on house prices. We need to invest in affordable housing, social housing, student housing.
Social housing?
To
That's called government-run ghettos.
give a good price and reduce pressure.
These people are
Blanchet,
idiots.
Mr.
Okay, Blanchet, now I no longer
Blanchet.
like you. You're an idiot. Say
I'm
immigrants.
with you.
Say the
With all those
rampant
who are having a hard
immigration
time
policy that has
affording their
destroyed
groceries, or
Canadians'
young
ability to own
people
a
who
home.
can't buy a house. After a decade of liberal inflation,
Very good.
liberal policies
Very good.
have increased the cost of living
True. Which ones?
the most in 40 years.
Which
I
policies?
will cut your taxes for
Good.
the average worker by 15%. We will scrap the GST on new homes, and we will incentivize municipalities to speed up permits and construction
Immigration.
so that young
Say
people
it,
can
Pierre.
once again buy a home
Mr. Carney.
and restore the dream
didn't say
of
it.
home ownership.
In order to fix this crisis
Of
in the
your own
cost of
making.
living, we need to make sure that Canadians have more money in their pockets,
So let's
and
tax
they
them
need to
more.
have more Canada in their pockets.
What the hell
So
does that mean?
That means a tax cut for the middle class,
Your tax cut on your taxes.
and our plan is almost $800 per family. Cut the GST on first homes and increase competition. And in Canada, we have
What the
dental
hell is
care,
he talking about?
pharmacare, and daycares. We need to protect that, and we need to double
This is
new housing construction in Canada.
this is verbal
with our
diarrhea.
plan.
This is
Very
Kamala
good. Thank you,
Harris-esque
Mr.
verbal
Singh.
diarrhea. I got to go see what he actually
Thank
said in
you.
French because that made no sense.
When I talk to people and the cost of living comes up, there are two main topics. First, grocery costs. Second, housing costs. For groceries, major grocery giants are gouging us. We saw this with the price of bread, the price of meat. They drive prices up, and they are gouging the Canadian public. We would put price caps on essential groceries. We would also stop corporate landlords from buying up affordable housing.
Nobody's
and
mentioned
apartments. We
immigration.
are in it for
Like that's
you.
not the problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. 245,000 housing units were built in 2024. You've all promised to massively accelerate the pace of that
How many
construction.
people
The
were
Liberals have
let
said
into the country?
500,000, the NDP 600,000. Mr. Sting, you're going to start this part of the open debate. Do houses grow on trees?
We have a clear plan for how to make this happen. First, we would not sell off our federal land. We would keep it and we would build affordable housing on it, 100% affordable. We would train Canadian workers to build more homes. We also must keep the affordable housing that we do have. And unfortunately, the two major parties have let rich speculators buy up affordable housing. And now we have no more. That's a major issue. We need to keep our affordable housing and build more housing in general.
A couple of ideas. First of all, I'd like to talk for Quebec. There are delays of hundreds of thousands of houses to be built, and we don't have the human resources to do so. But there are initiatives for small housing, for social housing, modular housing. That would allow us to build quicker with fewer resources and cheaper to accommodate as many people as possible. But I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's financial framework, because the Conservatives want to cut. They're going to have to cut spending at some point as well. The Liberals want to cut in revenue but increase expenditure. There's some financial magic that's in there somewhere. I would like to hear their financial framework, or even their electoral platforms.
In a minute,
that would be
the
nice.
costed plan. But Mr. Carney, 500,000 housing
Yes.
units.
And we need to get started. So
Get
that we
started.
can
He's been in
get the
power for
housing
10
market
years,
working better
promising this for
with a
10 years.
reduction
Say it,
in
Pierre.
bureaucracy at the municipal level and in fees. But we are proposing a new institution, Build Canada Homes, which is going to build affordable homes using lumber from Quebec, using lumber from British Columbia, using Canadian wood, and using new Canadian technologies. We are going to create a new industry.
But it
How
seems to
can you
me
say 500,000 units? I mean, I could say 800,000,
No,
400,000. Where's
we-
this coming from?
Ooh,
If I can have 35 seconds, we need to add funding
Defensive?
of $25 billion for the development of affordable homes,
Pierre had
and
better
$10
say
billion for
they've been
Mr.
promising this
Polyev,
for a decade.
you haven't costed your objective.
Yes,
of
we will.
600,000.
in our platform, which is going to come out in a few days. But Mr. Carney, you're repeating exactly the same promises that Justin Trudeau has been making for 10 years. During the Liberal decade, when you were the economic advisor, the
was
cost of
governor
housing
of the
has
Bank
gone up.
of England.
And you
Oh, that's
inflated
not
the
quite
cost
the
of
only you
housing
think it is,
then
Mark.
too. You have a terrible record in England for real estate
Here we
costs
go.
there, the real estate prices. The problem is that the Liberals want to build bureaucracy. They want to balloon bureaucracy by creating new departments, new bureaucrats.
He knows it. Look at his
We don't
face. He
need
knows
more
he just nailed
bureaucrats.
Carney.
We need more homes, more new doors on new
Shut up,
homes for
Singh.
young
Nobody's
families.
talking to you.
The reason why housing has become so expensive today is
Immigration.
because of taxes and bureaucracy. I will eliminate the GST on new homes. I will
Okay, let's
incentivize
talk records.
cities
Jugmeet,
to free up
nobody wants
land
to
and
hear from you.
accelerate permits
You're not a
so that we
serious
can
candidate.
build your home.
Mr. Singh, then Mr. Carney.
Let us talk records. Mr. Poilievre, you were
Yes,
a housing
absolutely.
minister. How many homes did you build?
Over
I'll
200,000.
tell you, 6. You built 6 homes.
200,000.
6.
Fact check.
200,000.
We cannot believe what
You
you're
asked the
saying.
question. Can I
We
answer
cannot
it?
believe Mr. Poilievre. He only built 6 homes when he was
200,000.
in power.
Can I answer?
We know the answer.
Can
it's
I
6.
answer?
Jugmeet
It was
Singh is such a
200,000
disgusting SOB.
that
It's
year,
unbelievable.
and the cost of the average home was $450,000. So thanks very
Okay,
much
Mr.
for
Singh, to
reminding everyone of
conclude.
my record. It was a good record.
During the 10
Clip it.
years the
It
Conservatives
says
were in
Pierre's
power, rent
claim.
doubled. Housing costs doubled. And then when the Liberals came in, they doubled again. Unfortunately, Mr. Carney benefited from the housing crisis when he was the board chair at Brookfield Investments. His company benefited from the housing crisis by buying up affordable buildings
my
and tripling
goodness.
rents.
Mr. Carney.
Okay, Mr. Poilievre's approach is everyone for themselves.
That's
In the
absolutely
COVID
not what he
crisis,
said.
he
you
said,
stupid
okay,
dumb
let's
bums.
cut taxes, let's cut bureaucracy. This crisis, now that we're facing the greatest crisis
Crisis,
of our lives,
crisis,
he's saying,
crisis,
cut taxes,
crisis.
cut bureaucracy.
Crisis.
In a crisis,
Crisis.
you have to do that to a certain point, but you have to act as a government. And if I may, you need to have capital to catalyze investment. And with a small amount of catalyzing investment from the government of Canada, we can create huge private investment and a new Canadian
All right,
industry.
Mr. Blanchet, then Mr. Poilievre.
Another proposal that I find interesting is to allow parents who have money in savings for their retirement to take the money temporarily to help for their kids' down payment. That's not $500 billion that will be required. These are not civil servants that will be fired. This is a logical decision made by parents like myself who want to help their kids without money from the state, with a tax measure that helps retirees who want to help their children. Would that not be more concrete than programs after programs that are just empty words and for which there's no financial framework?
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute, but let's let Mr. Poilievre conclude because you were having a conversation
Yes.
with Mr. Carney.
Mr. Carney, in 2020 and 2021, you said that inflation wouldn't happen and that it would have been a good thing if it did. You were quoted in the media and you even advised Justin Trudeau to print money, and that's what caused our inflationary crisis. You're just like Justin Trudeau. You have exactly the same policies, the same approach. We need change. And you, Mr. Carney, you do not
You don't
embody
represent change. You
change.
represent the ultra-rich.
Mr. Poilievre is not Justin Trudeau. I'm not Justin Trudeau either, okay? In this election, the question is,
but you were
who
advising
is going
Justin
to
Trudeau
succeed?
for the last
Who
5
is
years.
going to face Mr. Trump?
Trump crisis. Trump
Same
crisis.
parties, same
Get-
ministers, same caucus, same ideology.
Yes,
same
Blanchette.
hostility against Quebec.
Testify.
It's not just because the leader changes that the philosophy will magically change overnight.
You are all proposing, or just about all of you are proposing tax cuts. We'll see them up on the screen here. Mr. Carney announced that on the first day of the campaign. Mr. Poilievre's been announcing them for a long time. So for a couple earning $90,000 a year, you can see the numbers up here: $1,299 in savings for the Conservatives, $1,011 for the NDP, $577 for the Liberals. And the cost of those measures is really what I want to underline here. Mr. Poilievre, you're spending more on tax cuts than the NDP or Liberals. Now, you've all arrived here this evening with no costed financial plan. It's been a long time since we've seen that at the time of the leaders' debate, the leaders don't have a costed plan.
This is a fair point.
So we don't
Actually,
know how
decent
you're going
journalism.
to pay for these tax cuts. Now, I'm going to be
Trump
careful
crisis.
how I word this,
Wait
but
for
don't
it.
you think it's irresponsible to Canadian voters to do this? Mr. Carney, you said you've got the numbers, but where's your costed
Well, as
plan?
I've just said, we'll be presenting our costed platform this weekend.
But why not earlier at an event?
There are 10 days left in the election campaign. It's about the same thing as Mr. Poilievre, as I've seen. And it is going to be costed, and the operational budget will be cleaned up. We'll balance it in 3 years. But at the same time, we will be investing in Canada and in Canadians.
Mr. Poilievre, where would you make the cuts? This comes back to my earlier question to Mr. Carney. In terms of the costed plans, what do you have to hide? Will transfers to provinces go down, for example?
We're going to cut consultants. Believe it or not, a Canadian family is spending $1,400 in federal tax just to pay for consultants. That's been a 100% increase. I'm going to cut consultants. Secondly, we're going to cut the cost of bureaucracy through attrition. People will be retiring and we don't need to replace all of them. We can slowly, gradually reduce the cost of the bureaucracy. Third, we're going to pass a dollar for dollar bill. For every new dollar in spending, there will have to be a dollar in reduced spending. And we are going to generate $70 billion
But again,
more in
you
revenues.
and Mr. Carney don't have a costed plan that we've seen.
We are the only party that has talked about ways to increase government revenues. We've talked about closing tax loopholes, getting rid of tax havens, empowering the CRA to go after corporations that are not paying their taxes. These are not tax increases. These are taxes that are already supposed to be paid. The CRA has said that tens of billions of dollars in revenues are being lost. Pierre Poilievre has been very honest with Canadians. He will cut. He will cut
Not
healthcare.
true. No,
He will
not true.
cut
That's false.
EI. He said
That's
this back in
false.
2022 when he became leader of the Conservative
true.
Party.
That's false.
And Mark Carney has also said very clearly that he would make massive
no.
cuts.
No.
He would cut $43 billion worth
For
of
the first
spending.
time.
Mr.
No.
Carney, then Mr. Blanchet.
No, that's not right at all. I've said there is an operational budget that's over $200 billion a year. And that budget has grown 9% year over year over the last 10 years. We need to slow down that growth. And we'll do that with technology. We'll do that with attrition, as Mr. Poilievre has suggested. And we can do that, and we will do that. And it's necessary. But we're not going to cut transfers to individuals, nor transfers to the provinces.
So the provinces will not get less money. Mr. Blanchet, is that what you believe?
Well, I've an issue with this. These are Harry Potter financial frameworks. You need a lot of magic to make it work. There needs to be more money, but we're going to do cuts. They want to be more conservative than the Conservatives. Basic economic state that when there's a threat of recession or slowdown, that is when the state, well, that's why we're not saying cut taxes. We're saying make good investments. We want to invest in our military forces. It's the time to do so with Canadian companies, the Quebec tramway that Mr. Poilievre doesn't want to do. That's what we have to do. We have to have targeted investments, health transfers so that the Maisonneuve-Rosemont hospital can be
We'll do that.
renovated. It's time to invest in infrastructure, public infrastructure with public money so that everyone can keep their jobs.
So no tax cuts.
No, it wouldn't be a tax cut. There would be a specific budget for
It's
it.
necessary.
We have to keep going. They want to do one thing and the other. Cut, but somehow make more money. Something doesn't work.
How has
With the
nobody
cost
talked
of
about
living, we have
immigration
to
in
cut
all of
taxes
this
to the cost of
discussion?
living.
What Mr. Blanchet said is true. You were talking about a magic spell here, Mr. Carney. This is one rare moment where we agree. On February 16th, you sat down with Rosemary Barton and you said that you would cut spending in
Yes,
the operating
operational
budget.
spending. That's
You
different.
said
One at a time, please.
that this would affect transfers for
No.
healthcare and to
No,
individuals.
Mr. Roy, no,
I have a question.
that's not right at all. That's not right at all.
Please. Mr. Carney, you'll have the opportunity to answer later. The question that people are asking themselves, and you may have heard this, Mr. Singh, you've promised that every Canadian will have a family doctor, that there will be vastly more nurses. Does the federal government need to continue developing more national plans like pharmacare and dental care? Or option two, should they be giving more money to the provinces for healthcare? Mr. Carney, you'll start off. More programs or more money?
First
for
of all,
programs?
the priority for the federal government is to invest and to catalyze investment in the most serious crisis we're facing in our lives. We need to catalyze private investment in our economy to create new and good jobs. That's the first thing we need to do. In terms of transfers to provinces for healthcare, yes, there are limits to the federal government's activity. No,
So no new
programs. No.
Mr. Blanchet?
It's easy. All premiers from the provinces and territories unanimously asked for a 35% health transfer. I would like to re-explain it. The federal government receives more money than it needs. It needs $10, it gets 12. Quebec needs $10, but it only gets 8. So the federal government could take its surplus and say, I would like to invest in your jurisdictions. The Liberals and the Conservatives agree on this, and the NDP loves butting its nose into provincial jurisdiction. The Constitution sets out jurisdictions. The
All right.
easiest way is to give the money
Mr.
without
Singh?
conditions.
You've said that we do need to step in, that we need to have more programs like this.
Let me explain. Absolutely, we need to increase health transfers. Absolutely. in order to help out the provinces. What is more, we are now in the midst of a crisis, a healthcare crisis. It is being felt here in Quebec and all throughout the country. We should recognize that a leader is someone who looks for solutions, not excuses. I believe that we should be investing more in fixing problems. And yes, we can work with the provinces to hire more healthcare workers. We can work with them to get through this crisis. Pharmacare is one area where everyone can come together to bring down the cost of medication. We believe in helping people.
Deciding Quebec's priorities isn't your jurisdiction. I don't go
This
to
is
your house and
something
tell
that
you
will
how to
help
pay your
out
wall, do
everyone.
I? It's money that you would refuse to give Quebec.
We can do two things at
Mr.
once. We
Poilievre?
can transfer money and then work with the provinces on other solutions.
Mr. Poilievre, more money to the provinces or more federal programs?
I think the federal government is taking too much tax revenues and delivering too little. And that's the Liberal track record after 10 years. And the question for Canadians is, you can't afford your groceries and you can't afford your rent or your housing because it's too expensive now after 3 terms of Liberal government. Will a 4th Liberal term change things for you enough for you to be able to buy a house and have a beautiful life?
Okay, for the health program, I didn't
On
understand.
healthcare, no. What I propose on that is a program that the federal government could coordinate, and that is to do with licenses for doctors and nurses. It would be a voluntary program, as has previously existed, to allow immigrants to be licensed and be able to work in our hospitals to reduce your wait times.
So everyone agrees on health transfer. The question is, the 13 premiers of the 13 economies of Canada. Canada doesn't have one economy, it has 13 economies. These requests were made to stop the deterioration
Very good.
of the healthcare system.
Next theme, energy and climate.
The carbon tax was something that was supposed to help the environment, but now, what are we doing for the environment? It worries me a bit. Our planet is starting to die. I really want to see someone who can prioritize climate change and the economy in Canada. We shouldn't be building a pipeline. The environmental consequences are very serious. Even if for ecological reasons, it's not the best solution. Well, I think we have to think about it. There was a good project in place, but then it was dropped. A pipeline would have a major impact. We may have to make sacrifices if we want to be more independent. Drill, baby, drill, says Donald Trump. But I have a very simple question for you, and I would like just a simple answer as well. You have 35 seconds open debate. Do you want Canada to increase oil production? Yes or no? Mr. Singh.
I don't know how Carney's going to answer this.
I would be in favor of investing in clean energy, renewable energy. With our public money, I would spend on projects like an east-west clean energy grid. That's the sort of thing we need.
What's
we need
clean
renewable
energy?
energy for our future. That is where we should invest our public funds.
So more or less oil or the same amount as right now? You want to increase it? That's what people want to know. Are you increasing oil production?
There are a few measures that I support. Investing in clean energy, bringing down our
We'll get
emissions.
to that in the open debate later.
What's
But the
clean energy? I
question
want to know.
is
Yes,
very
I
simple, I
understand.
think. Mr. Carney.
Yes, more oil so that we can reduce our imports, especially our imports from the
But
United
he has
States,
been
a country
crippling
that is threatening
Canada.
us right now. But in order to do that, we need to have low-risk oil. Canada is a low-risk country, and low-cost oil. Canada's more or less that right now, but we also need low-carbon oil because we need to be competitive over the long term.
What the hell does
at
that
the same
mean?
time, we need to have pipelines. We need to invest in carbon stockage, carbon
This is
capture as well. That's very
rubbish.
important for
We'll
our
get back to that
competitiveness.
later. Mr.
Thanks. He
Poilievre,
said nothing.
should we produce more oil in Canada?
Yes. And the
Yes.
Liberals have been killing it.
And We have to be able to get it to market by pipeline. Unfortunately, the other parties passed an unconstitutional law, C-69, which is a no more pipelines bill. And that's why Canadians and Quebecers now have to buy 139,000 barrels of U.S. oil every day. I will repeal C-69 to allow for the construction of hydroelectric projects, mines, and also pipelines so that we can get around Donald Trump
Mr.
and
Blanchet.
be sovereign when it comes to energy.
There's a competition as to who will be the biggest oil head here. The Americans buy our oil, we buy their oil, because that's how geography works. I want less oil, but let us be clear. The one that approved 9B for Enbridge was me when I was the Environment Minister, but I say that we have to progressively wean off of petrol and oil because the cost on families will be far worse than what Mr. Poilievre says.
Shut up, Blanchet. Now you're out in left
Paying for
field.
the consequences of
I don't like you anymore.
climate change will cost billions of dollars every single year per
Go
family.
ask the natives how they
Let's
feel
invest
about
in
the
Quebec's
clean
Mr.
hydrogen.
Blanchet. I'd like to ask a question to
Idiots.
launch the debate. Mr. Carney, for 17 years now, the Liberals have been telling us that the only way to fight against climate change is to put a price on carbon
Yeah.
with the carbon tax.
Such a
There
crisis.
was
They
elections
undid
on
it
this.
right before the election.
But the first day you came to power, you abolished this tax. What should Canadians understand from this? Is the fight against climate change no longer
No.
a priority for Liberals?
Not at all. It is still a priority, and it's a priority for Canada.
But
We're talking a lot about diversifying our trade partners around the world.
not answering the
The
question.
European Union. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in manufacturing and energy in all of
Can
our
you answer the
products
question?
so that we can have better access to that market. But in terms of the carbon tax, we cut the consumer carbon tax.
Okay.
And that covers about 6% of the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. We are maintaining the industrial carbon tax for big polluters, but we're creating a new market so that major polluters will pay people and households to make
Mr.
green
Poilievre,
decisions.
you would axe the second carbon tax as well, the industrial tax. You would eliminate both. So there's not even a fight against climate change or no incentive except
That's not true.
less gas.
There's a cost associated with using energy already, but my approach is a pragmatic one. For example, the National Bank calculated that if we export our natural
To
gas,
India,
our
you would
liquefied
reduce
natural
global
gas, to India, for example, to replace coal, that could reduce emissions in India by 2.5 billion tons. That's 3 times the emissions of all of Canada, and would also bring a lot of money back to Canada.
It would
the
be
Liberals
better
are
for the world
blocking the construction
save
of
and make
the
Canada money.
pipeline and of the LNG plants. For example, LNG Quebec is a project that would make it possible for us to sell our energy very profitably to Europe and reduce Europe's dependence on Putin. And that's what I would like to do instead of feeding
Mr.
into
Blanchet.
Putin's war machine.
Mr. Carney's abolition of the carbon
Fine.
tax means that Canadians outside of Quebec will receive a rebate for several weeks still for a tax that has been cut. So this puts Quebec in an unjust position. What are you asking in this respect?
Another element,
So finish
it
with
might
this.
give Mr. Carney's an opportunity to answer. Last year, Canada invested $30 billion in oil. Trans Mountain cost $40 billion. It took 9 years to build it. That means that with only just these elements, that's $16 billion of Quebec money that was invested in oil. Do you want a great energy work site? It's Quebec's green work site. So let's invest there.
Well,
With regards to the
maybe Quebec
$3.7
should
billion,
pay its fair share
government
from
would
hydro revenues.
preemptively reimburse the tax carbon. Now the carbon tax. Now they've cancelled the carbon tax before the elections, but they're still sending reimbursements for expenditures that people won't have to do because the carbon tax no longer exists. Quebec is responsible and still has a cap and trade system like California. We're being penalized. We're taking $800 million out of Quebecers' pockets. That's $100 per person, including newborn babies, $800 from everyone's pockets. $100 from everyone's pockets to offer electoral
Mr. Carney,
baubles just before an election.
Is there not an injustice there?
It's not an injustice. Quebec is a pioneer in carbon markets, and that's clear. First point. And the second point, Canadians outside of Quebec and British Columbia have paid the carbon tax, and as such, they receive the carbon rebate, and all Canadians, including Quebecers,
Carbon rebate.
will receive the middle class tax cut. Because we have what we've done, there's a principle here. There's an important principle here.
Yes, you're going to speak in a moment. Just in terms of clarity for those who are listening to us, what reimbursement are you talking about?
The rebate. No, not in Quebec.
I need to go
No,
hear
not
this
in
French.
Quebec.
Hold on.
But
But
Quebec
there's a
gas
principle.
prices are higher.
There's a principle here. We are making people whole, people who paid the carbon tax, and we're doing that in a fair way.
Europe, Quebec, and California has a system that incentivizes companies to
We've
reduce
also-
their greenhouse gas emissions. It's about 9 cents per liter, and
Mr.
it's much
Singh.
cheaper than the potential effects and the future effects of climate
Just to
change.
get back to the debate topic, we are talking about the climate crisis here. That is not something that is a long way off. This is something going on right now. We are already in the midst of the climate crisis. We have seen it here in Quebec. Extreme temperatures, forest fires, flooding.
Oh boy, that
I
when,
agree
when
with Mr.
Mark Carney
Blanchet
said
that
what rebate is so much worse
it is
without the dubbing over.
too high
I'm
a
gonna go
cost to
snap
bear.
that.
So we need to do something. I spoke with one mother before I became a father, and she said, I'm worried about my children when they play outside. I'm worried about the BC forest fires. Our children cannot breathe the air outside. And now that I am a father, I feel the same anxiety. With forest fires, people cannot breathe the air.
Shut up.
So we need to do something. We need to protect our environment, and we need to protect our children.
Mr. Poilievre, you're
Sorry.
clear. You're saying that we need a pipeline. If, in spite of all of your efforts with the Indigenous nations, they say no, would you impose it in spite of all of your efforts? If Quebec says no, would you impose it?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't assume that because most Quebecers want a pipeline. According to the polls, look, there's no social acceptability for the status quo. Thank you very much.
That is the most empty
I
sentence
speak?
I've ever heard in this debate
Can
so
I answer
far.
the question?
No, it's nonsense, absolute nonsense.
I'll say what it means. I'll tell you. Quebecers who buy oil from Alberta, it's got to go through the U.S. currently, which gives Donald Trump power over our own energy. You say you're in favor of sovereignty. I'm in favor of economic sovereignty and energy sovereignty, and that requires a
It's
pipeline
yet
across
another
Canada.
scarecrow. The US will never bomb their economy so much by sacrificing a
You never
hugely
know.
profitable product. That's such an amazing argument. How much will your pipeline cost? Trans Mountain cost $40 billion, but now you want a 4,600-kilometer pipeline without investors, with Europe that doesn't even
Mr.
want it in the
Poilievre and
first
Mr.
place.
Carney.
Just to clarify, would never subsidize pipelines. That's unnecessary. They're very profitable. The only reason why it's expensive now is because there are rules and legislation that prevent the construction of pipelines because of bureaucracy. We're going to get rid of red tape. We're going to open this up to
I'll ask my question
Environmental
again.
protections, cutting environmental regulations.
If Indigenous nations, in spite of all your nice efforts, and talking about Mr. Carney and you who want a pipeline, if they refuse, what do you do?
They're not going to refuse.
Are you saying across the board?
Yes, we've seen this.
Because
No, we haven't.
He can't say that. He doesn't get to impose his will.
Mr. Polyev, if there are Indigenous nations or provinces that are against it, what do you do?
well, there
Negotiate
are
if it
others
happens.
who will be in favor. For example, Mr. Carney opposed a pipeline in the West, which would have enabled us to sell our oil to Asia, the Northern Gateway project. 80% of First Nations were in favor, 20% were against. And in a case like that, I think the majority rules. And I think we need to allow our companies to pay some of their taxes directly to First Nations to fight poverty through industry
Mr.
and
Carney.
production. That's our approach.
Would you be ready to impose one?
No, never impose. Can I respond, please? Never impose. No, but a couple of points. First of all, our relationship with the United States has changed everything. So imports from the United States and geography, as Mr. Poilievre has said, around pipelines, those are problems. Those are national security problems for us, and we need to act. That's the first point. Second, on March 21st, there was a meeting of the premiers. All the premiers were here in Ottawa, and we sat down and we agreed. All the premiers signed an agreement to have an energy corridor that would cover oil, natural gas, clean energy, and critical minerals. And with that, and with a process with Indigenous leaders, we can and we could have a solution to this problem. And that's an example of leadership. That's an example of bringing leaders together to meet a national goal. We need to do more than that over this crisis.
I'll ask the question again. If ever Indigenous nations
No, I've said no.
against
I've said
it,
no.
you forget the project?
Well, no.
You cannot force projects on people.
Listen, it's a question
I have
of-
another question about the environment. Here's the
second.
question.
Yes,
You have said
please.
that you are
I'm gonna try it.
pragmatic person.
Give me a second,
Do you
peeps.
agree that it is not pragmatic to continue to
Let me see if I can do it. Give me 5 seconds. I want to try to go to the French election. I'll see if I can do it. Voyez le, here, check ça bien. Okay.
Non, pas au Québec.
ailleurs.
Pas au
This is-
Québec.
D'accord, c'est ça, mais
Ok, c'est ça.
Oh,
Québec,
Quebec.
le-
Il y a
le
pas de
prix de
rebate.
l'essence,
There's no rebate in Quebec. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I want to hear their voices.
les inondations. Donc,
Absolument.
ça, c'est pourquoi,
Alors,
mes
c'est
amis,
quoi?
vous avez besoin des néo-démocrates. Voilà, on a sécuré un
Non,
engagement
c'est pas un
aujourd'hui.
c'est pas
he said
nouveau,
we
c'est
got
pas
an
un nouvel
invitation
engagement.
Pourquoi on a
C'est-
besoin des
c'est
néo-démocrates?
pas un nouvel engagement, honnêtement.
Une
It's
question.
not, it's not a new
À
problem.
la
What they're talking
mi-février,
about.
je crois en Colombie-Britannique, vous avez fait comme tous les grands leaders
He thinks in
canadiens,
British
vous avez dit une
Columbia.
chose en anglais qui était que si nécessaire, vous alliez utiliser les pouvoirs d'urgence de
He said in
l'exécutif
English, if he
pour
needed to, he
forcer,
would use the
vous l'avez
emergency
dit, je l'ai
powers.
moi-même entendu
He
hier,
says, of course he did. I
forcer
heard it.
les oléoducs à travers le Canada, incluant à travers le
force
Non, 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 non,
That's
non,
c'est
non,
ça,
non,
deux
non,
jours
non,
après,
non, non,
avec
non,
M.
non,
Roy,
non, ce
je
n'était
vous le
pas
ferai écouter,
ça.
No,
ça
no,
va
it
être
wasn't
pas ça,
that.
on est devenus copains.
Non, non.
Avec
C'est
M.
you-
Roy, 2 jours après, vous avez dit jamais je vais
with Mr.
forcer
King,
ça.
Non,
he
c'est
Donc,
said
ce
2
n'est pas
days
des
later, I would
règles qui
never
ont
force
empêché
it.
le passement de l'oléoduc au Québec, c'est l'acceptabilité sociale. Les Québécois
je-
ont dit non.
Monsieur
Quebec
Carnet
doesn't want
répondit, j'aurais une
pipelines.
question.
OK, je suis d'accord avec ça, mais c'est l'utilisation des pouvoirs
I'm good with that.
d'urgence au fédéral.
But
C'est
what I'm talking
pour
about, emergency powers.
l'approbation fédérale. Mais il faut avoir l'approbation à l'échelle, par exemple,
He says
ici
you
au
have to have the
Québec,
approval
des
of
provinces
the
et
provinces
le
to
soutien
build
des
a cross
peuples
pipeline.
autochtones. C'est le Canada. Le
It's
Canada
Canada.
fonctionne comme cela. Mais
Canada works
autre
like
point,
that.
si je peux dire,
Another
on
point, if I may.
commençait d'avoir des accords de coopération avec les provinces afin d'avoir un projet une évaluation.
There's going
Et
to be
ça va
agreements with the
accélérer
provinces
les grands
to
projets.
have these pipelines.
Très
It'll be
bien.
accelerate
Monsieur
the
Blanchet,
project.
vous avez dit il y a plus de chances que je signe la Constitution canadienne que dire oui à un projet de pipeline. Mais
He says,
comment on
he says
peut,
to
à
Blanchet,
ce
you
point, se
said there's a greater
peinturer
chance that
dans
you
le coin en
sign
disant
the
au
Canadian
grand jamais,
Constitution than have a
si
pipeline.
ça s'empirait, les relations avec les Américains, effectivement, le pipeline que vous avez inversé passe par les États-Unis. Si ce qu'on importe des États-Unis devient plus difficile à importer, pourquoi se barrer les mains?
La menace de M. Trump, elle est
the
extrêmement
States.
sérieuse. Mais il ne fera pas une autodestruction de l'économie américaine et les Américains considèrent que le pétrole canadien est dans leur cour arrière, tout simplement. Ensuite de ça, comme je le disais, il n'y a pas de règle qui empêche la circulation du pétrole ou un oléoduc.
There's
Les
no
Québécois
rule
n'ont
that
pas
would
voulu. Le
prevent
fédéral dit, ou M. Carney dit, je vais
from-
respecter les règles environnementales du Québec. Il ne peut pas imposer des
He
délais
says,
aux règles
Carney says he's going to
environnementales du
respect
Québec.
the
Donc, il y
environmental
a
guidelines
des
of
éléments
Québec.
qui sont juste incohérents. Je veux revenir aussi sur le
C'est
fait
long,
que
jamais
donner des
c'est long.
congés...
They're talking about
Non,
building a
ça reste
pipeline
non, parce que
and
le
Quebec's
Québec est
environmental
l'endroit au monde le mieux placé
regulation.
pour développer une super puissance d'énergie propre avec un énorme marché
It's the best place-
directement au sud,
Deux petites villes.
sans
The best
même
place
demander la
to build a
permission au
superpower of
Canada.
energy
Pourquoi on mettrait
is
notre
Quebec.
argent dans un pétrole qui n'a pas de retombée économique au
Why
Québec?
would we put our
Si
money
ce n'est
into
d'augmenter
an
ce qu'on
oil
paiera à la
pipeline that would
pompe.
have no
Deux petites vites
benefit
pour
to Quebec?
clore le bloc. Monsieur Singh, je vais vous donner la parole. Vous êtes en léger retard, mais léger retard. Tramway et troisième lien, on est dans l'environnement, on est dans le transport aussi. Donc,
We're in
tramway,
environment,
troisième
transport,
lien, est-ce que vous
tramway.
financez les deux ou un des deux? à Québec?
La réponse est simple pour moi,
This
c'est
is
le
the answer,
tramway,
simple.
oui. On est pour le transport en commun.
We're for the
Et
we're for
on
public
est contre
transportation.
les projets qui sont
Do
mauvais
we
pour
prefer this
l'environnement.
to listening
Donc,
to the
vous êtes contre le
translators?
troisième lien.
Exact. On est contre la troisième ligne. On est pour le tramway.
They're for the
En fait,
tramway. They're
une
against the
solution pour
third
faire
link.
face à la crise climatique et quelque chose qui peut aider notre économie, c'est d'investir massivement dans le transport.
Yeah, I kind of like the translators just because I can understand all of it.
Ensemble avec
Yeah,
les
let's go
provinces,
back.
avec les
Okay.
transferts pour mieux
That's right. I'm also
financer
taking
ces
for granted that I understand things and then not bothering to translate them. Anyways, that's what their voices sound like, people. Voyez le débat, on va ici. Okay.
Subsidize.
Okay, we're gonna. Oh, how do I just go here? There. I will be a few seconds behind.
In terms of the tramway and the third link, we're talking about the environment and public transit as well. So the third link, would you fund this or the tramway? One or the other, or both?
Yes, for the Quebec City Tramway, we support public
Yeah,
transit.
let's listen to this.
We are against projects that are bad for the environment.
So you're against the third link.
Exactly. We are against the third link. We support the tramway.
What is the third link exactly? Hold on.
One solution to address the climate crisis, while at the same time helping our economy, is to invest heavily in public transit. This would help municipalities, this would help provinces. We could work together with them and use transfers to provide more funding for these projects. And they're the sort of projects we need.
Oh my
They
goodness.
would
The
create
third
good
link is a
jobs
proposed
while
project to
at the same
Quebec
time
to
helping Canada reduce
to connect
emissions.
Quebec City with Lévis. I mean, this
Tramway
is
or
local
third
politics.
link,
Nobody's going to
both,
have any care
or
for
just the third link?
Just the third link. You have to make choices. And I would speak to people in the regions today. The other parties are against the third link, and they want to ban gas-powered cars. That's not practical in the regions of our country. You need a truck, you need a car in order to live in regional areas. So I'm going to reverse that. You'll be able to keep your truck. We will build highways and bridges so that you can live a good life in the
Mr.
regions.
Blanchet? Both projects?
The Quebec government wants the tramway. The city of Quebec City, rather, wants the tramway. The federal government needs to give the money required to the provincial government for the tramway. We don't know what a third link looks like. We don't know where it's going to go, under, over. We don't know what color it's going to be.
You are
Yes,
supposed
but-
to give your opinion on that for the past three debates.
Please remind me of my past.
Mr. Carney?
Well, I can be quick. Tramway, yes, because there is a project that's underway. We support it. And as Mr. Blanchet has said, there is no project right now for the third link.
But I think the third link will be a blue one.
It'll be blue? Right.
I don't have a lot of time left, but I'll add one more question. Do we have to speed up the development of nuclear power
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And for a couple of reasons.
across Quebec, in Ontario?
Well, yeah.
His French is so
It's a
bad. I
choice
mean, he
that,
gets the words out,
Quebec
but it's
and the
just,
provinces will
they don't
make.
do justice
But
to how bad his
we
French
have
is.
a major advantage here in Canada. We have uranium. We have big nuclear companies, including Westinghouse, Candu, and others, and we have technology in
yes.
small modular reactors. So it's a great opportunity.
I understand there are worlds in the countries in the world that need nuclear energy. I don't think Canada needs nuclear energy. Quebec doesn't want it. I'm not going to interfere in Canadian energy.
Well,
but
they could be reviewed.
no, Quebecers don't want nuclear energy.
Who says?
I'm also the one
Blanchette.
that managed the closure of the
Yes.
Gentilly plant.
But we're not going to reopen it.
As a national project, I am in favor of an east-west energy grid that would connect Quebec with Manitoba and
Nuclear power.
BC to transport clean energy. It could. I'm
Perfect.
not so much in favor of nuclear energy. I support renewable
problem with nuclear
hydro
energy?
more.
In favor. Yep. That's one of the best sources of electricity. It provides 60% of the electricity
It's
in
clean,
Ontario.
it's safe.
Unfortunately, bureaucracy slows down construction without adding any safety. So I would take the politicians off the Nuclear Safety Commission and allow scientists to do the work so that we can add
Very
that
good.
source of energy to the portfolio.
This is the first time I've heard Mr. Poilievre say something
Next theme,
pro-science.
Who just said that?
immigration.
Was that Jagmeet Singh who said that?
Next theme, immigration and foreign affairs.
Well, don't you love they have more diversity in the voices than they do in the candidates? I love it. They got to have a
There are
woman's
lots of
voice for
issues
the
with
voiceovers
immigration
when it's
that are
5 men
linked
on
to
stage.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, that fun voice was Jagmeet's.
Done a good job.
Okay, well, Jagmeet's an absolute
We have to
jackass.
deal with people who are arriving in droves because
I'm pretty
people
sure that's a
arriving and they don't
trans
have
person who's doing
Should we let them in
Jagmeet's.
or not? Why not? Why not welcome them if we have the capacity? Do you think we should let in anyone who wants to come? In the United States, there's one rule. In Canada, there's another. I think everyone should follow the rule.
Oh, here, listen to this. Immigration. Let's hear what globalist Carney has to say about it.
We know there are over 500,000 Haitians currently living in the United States who are now being threatened with deportation. They might lose their temporary protection. I'll show you the numbers here.
Are they going back to the States? Did he just say States or Canada?
The number of people crossing the border in Saint-Bernard-de-la-Colle.
That's our border crossing in
1,411
Quebec.
people in the first half of April. That's more than in March, February, or January. So you can see the numbers are growing. Simple question. You have 35 seconds each. Would you accept these Haitians into Canada or not? Mr. Carney.
Well, first of all, this is a question of humanity. This is a human issue. And these are some of the most vulnerable people in North America. But there are limits. We have to be human, but we have to be realistic. Canada cannot accept everyone. And we have an agreement with the Americans, the Safe Third Country Agreement. And under that agreement, we will send back most asylum seekers.
So they would be mostly sent back to the U.S. Mr. Blanchet.
That's amazing. Carney's taken a harder immigration stance than Pierre.
The requester. We can't say we'll welcome the Haitians, but tough luck to the Venezuelans. The rules need to be the same for everyone.
It's amazing, but Quebec
to this
only
because
wants
I
the French-speaking
often meet
immigrants.
with Haitian representatives.
The Bloc is such a
They are
fraud
francophones, so
of a
it's
party.
easier for them to integrate into Quebec. If Quebec is able financially to welcome them, then I'm sympathetic. But the rules have to be applied, and Quebec's welcoming capacity is at its very limit.
The formal rule now would be to send them back because they are in a safe third country, i.e. the U.S. Mr. Singh.
In general, we should do our part. It's a question of humanity and compassion.
We love the fact that our country is
appreciate
based
the
on
fact that our country is founded on immigration.
openness.
That is something important to us. We want immigration levels that are in line with our needs. But yes, we need to take in people, but if we cannot accept people, well, We don't want them to have a bad life here in Canada and Quebec. So we need immigration, but we
Poilievre.
cannot take
What
it
the
for granted.
hell does that mean?
Yes or no?
The specific question
The question is,
do we accept those people?
for the people crossing the border at Lacolle, would
No.
they be welcome to Canada or not? Because we have the right to send them back under the Safe Third Country Agreement.
Unfortunately, they have to be returned because immigration has to follow the normal entry points. Quebecers are extremely generous and welcoming. They welcomed my wife, as Mr. Blanchet mentioned, but the Liberal government has abused Quebecers' generosity with an out-of-control immigration system.
Abuse Canada's generosity.
The population has grown 3 times faster than the number of new homes built. This has created a housing crisis in Quebec. They're at the
Why didn't
breaking
he mention
point.
this in the housing
And
discussion?
the government of Quebec has been given the power to choose immigrants. That was under the Mulroney government that power was delegated to Quebec. So we need to have realistic numbers.
How did he not
realistic
mention the
based on our
immigration during the housing
capacity.
discussion?
Here. What Mr. Poilievre is saying is that immigrants
that's not
should be blamed for something that is really the fault of successive conservative and liberal governments.
You're
who
the
have
dumbest
not
man on the
invested
planet,
enough in our
Jugmeet.
resources, who have not
Congratulations.
built enough housing, who have not
Oh, we got to build housing to
welcomed people
accommodate
in the way that they should have been welcomed.
immigration and
This
not
cannot
vice versa.
be blamed on immigrants.
What a
All right.
stupid
That's not
idiot
true.
Jugmeet is.
Quebec is now asking, given the number of asylum seekers in its territory, for $500 million. That was the amount they asked for in 2024. Mr. Poilievre, you'll be starting this open debate. Would you be sending a $500 million check to Quebec?
We have to work with the government of Quebec to fix the damage the Liberals caused with an out-of-control immigration system. And I also have to say that I reject the Century Initiative, which is a Liberal policy to balloon Canada's population to 100 million people. That's extreme. I think we should go back to immigration levels that are such that the population never grows faster than the number of houses, jobs, or healthcare
Mr. Carney.
services available.
Would you give more money to Quebec? And more generally, where would you like to have the immigration quota set?
Yes, we'll start with the second part. We need to have a cap on all types of immigration for a certain amount of time so that we can increase our capacity to welcome newcomers to Canada, including in housing, in training and language training here in Quebec, and make sure that the social safety net can accept them. And in those
So,
circumstances,
sorry, the targets announced by your predecessor, Mr. Trudeau, you would bring them down further, is that correct?
well, there are some challenges here in Quebec, for example. Challenges with temporary foreign workers, for example. And it's a question of distribution, if I can say it that way. The distribution of workers across Quebec. And there's a shortage of workers. But we will maintain the cap on immigration for certainly a couple of years so that we can increase our ability to welcome
Mr.
newcomers.
Would you reduce the number of immigrants to Canada in general?
Yes.
Instead of answering with a simple yes or no, I would want to base our response on the facts. It is obvious that we need immigration.
Why?
When I
At
speak
what
to
levels
Quebec
and why is it
farmers, they
obvious?
tell me, yes, we need immigrants to work on our farms. When I talk to small and medium
We need
businesses,
immigrants to work on the
they
farms.
tell me that we need immigrants. The question is,
So we need people
what
to exploit.
level of immigration? We would base our
Someone clip this and
immigration
share this.
levels
Jugmeet, the
on
racist
the findings of an
immigrant
expert
exploiter.
panel, which would study our capacities. Then we would have a data-based number. But
We need
I do
immigrants
not
to
want to
work
fall
the
into the trap of
exploitive jobs that we don't pay
fear-mongering or
Canadians enough to do.
blaming immigrants
Good
for
work,
things.
Jugmeet.
We need
You're
a
a modern-day
facts-based,
slave
needs-based
proponent.
Mr.
approach.
Blanchet.
Temporary foreign workers are temporary. They're a different category. Foreign students are a separate category, and they are essential for our post-secondary establishments in Quebec and in Canada. Unfortunately, it's being used as a roundabout way to get asylum, and asylum is also taken advantage of through smuggling and organized crime. We don't want to import vulnerable workers because we simply need people. Asylum seekers should be people who are in distress.
Someone, if you could, clip that last part and share it.
Based on
Tag
our
me.
welcoming capacity. We are not currently in Quebec
So you think we
able
should
to
reduce
welcome as
targets
many people that are
accordingly?
arriving. Quebec needs to be able to establish what its targets are. And one clear element,
Answer the question.
the federal parliament, with a Bloc Québécois initiative, decided to force the federal government to consult provinces within 100 days to determine how many immigrants would be welcomed. No one can decide, apart from Quebec, how much Quebec can accept and welcome.
Another rare moment where I agree with Mr. Blanchet.
It's twice in one night, Jugme. It's
Temporary
clearly not
foreign
so rare, you
workers are
stinking
often
dumb
victims
bum.
of power abuses. We would restrict the use of workers who are exploited by major corporations.
The
He
Centre
just
Initiative
talked
was
about
100
exploiting
million
them.
immigrants in Canada before the end of the century. Dominic Barton, a parliamentary committee, said that they did not take into account the uniqueness of Quebec, and one of the two co-authors of the Centre Initiative and 100 million people is now one of Mr. Carney's close advisors.
Mr. Carney, on a different subject now, would you say that the immigration system in Canada is going off the rails, or has gone off the rails in the
Jugme
last
is
7 or 8
bona
years?
fide dumb. Not even a smart evil
The
person, just a
system
dumb evil
isn't
person.
working.
Whose
And
system's not working?
especially after the pandemic. Our population has gone up, I think, at about 3% per year because of immigration. And that's why we need to have a cap for a certain period of time. And I can
His
say,
government
I'd like to
opened
say
up the
that
country, ruined it, jacked up housing
Canadians,
prices. Now this
Quebecers,
jackass wants to
and
put a
all
cap.
Canadians,
He's been advising Trudeau for 5 years. Say it, Pierre.
they want to welcome immigrants. There's no problem with Canadians' attitudes here at all. It's the responsibility of all of us
All right.
to increase our capacity to welcome newcomers.
Is it normal? Now, in France, it takes 6 months. In Germany, 8 months. So, why do asylum seekers coming to Canada take at least 3 years to be processed?
Because Canada is obstinate in welcoming more people than they can process,
That's not the right word.
house, and they're not taking into account the proportionality of every province and
It takes
territory.
3 years because they take too many.
I spoke with federal public servants, and they told me that there is a lack of resources. There aren't enough workers to manage all the files that are coming
So
in.
hire more government workers
It's
to
unthinkable that
process the
people have to
immigrants that are
wait
coming
3
in
years
en
for an
masse.
answer.
But is that not the
It's
big
a
problem,
huge
Mr. Poilievre?
problem. So we need to have more people working on this.
More government dollars to hire government employees
People
to
who can
process
make decisions, or at the
immigrants.
very least provide an answer, because
that
it is
gets paid from
entirely
what, Jughead?
unacceptable that we have people waiting so long.
Mr. Poilievre, is this problem solvable?
Yes.
What do you say?
Look, it's all about efficiency.
Or reducing
By
immigration, Pierre.
Screening out bogus asylum seekers. That's what's slowing things down. We could reduce processing times by getting rid of the bogus claimants. And when people are forum shopping, when they've been to other places, that also slows things down and
Can you be
discourages
as severe with
genuine
everyone?
claimants. My point of view is that if someone's in danger in their country of origin, they should be able to decide to come to Canada. But if they're not refugees, for example, we've seen a situation in Mexico where people came here without ever needing to be refugees. They never needed asylum, and that causes a bottleneck in the system. And so what we're going to do is ensure that genuine refugees can come here and have their lives saved through the generosity of
But
Canadians.
how do you separate the real ones from the non-real ones?
Well,
This is
that's the problem.
this
The
is a terrible
machine,
answer.
the apparatus is too cumbersome. And Mexico was one of the causes in the problem. So by eliminating that
Mr. Carney,
source, that
3
helps
years. Is that
alleviate
an
the
acceptable
problem.
wait time in Canada?
No, it's not acceptable. It's inhumane. It's inhumane for asylum seekers. And that's an indication that there is a problem with productivity in that department. That takes resources, but it's also a question of productivity.
Why not hitting the brake pedal with kindness, of course? Why not slow things down until we have a good system and
Hitting
a
the
good
brakes with
public
kindness.
service for
This is
immigration
the
that can
state of
deal with
Canadian
files
politics.
in a
Let's
few
hit the
months?
brakes. Oh, he's
The
British.
rhythm is
Let's hit the
far
brakes
too
of
quick,
open borders
and so we
with
can't
kindness.
succeed at this rate.
This
People for
is like
economic
a
reasons or who are
who
in
can
distress
who
for
can
other
be who can
reasons
virtue signal the
come
hardest.
to Canada, and they're lost because
And
their files
just,
aren't
if I may.
being processed.
You can conclude, Mr. Carney.
I more or less agree with that, but we need to be, as you've said, we need to be neutral. We need to act in a neutral and fair way.
All right.
What the
fair
hell
way
are they talking
I
about?
want to save some time to talk about two other important files, international aid, Ukraine, and Gaza. I
Oh,
think
boy.
we've understood your position on
Get
immigration.
the fireworks ready, people.
The question is simple. Should we cut international aid or not? I'll give you some figures here. $2.1 billion is being given to Ukraine currently. That's a large amount of money for Canada. Ethiopia also, Haiti. There's a long list of other countries
So
that we
they're
could have
giving
put up on
money
the
to the
board.
countries that they're also taking in
Mr. Poilievre, you've
asylum
said that
seekers
we
and
need to
immigrants
cut
from?
international
Makes
aid.
sense.
What would you cut? Ukraine, Ethiopia, Haiti?
No. I would start by cutting off China. The Liberal government gave $250 million to the Chinese Infrastructure Bank in order to build pipelines, highways, and other infrastructure to promote the expansion of Beijing's empire. I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer money. Also, we saw UNRWA, the organization in the Gaza Strip that took part,
In the
or
terrorist
whose
attack.
employees took part in the attacks of September 7th. So I don't think we should be funding that type of activity either. The aid we give should be directly to people in need and not through bureaucracies, multinational bureaucracies and
Let's
terrorists.
talk about Gaza. Currently, Doctors Without Borders, just today, said that the situation was worse than ever. So if you cut UNRWA, which might be an imperfect organization, but if you cut aid to them, how can Canada help Palestinians?
With not-for-profit groups, NGOs that will deliver the services directly
But
to
the
Gazans
only group
on the ground,
I'd like to
because it's a
start.
waste of money when that money that's not even getting to the people.
I will start by saying
Qu'il y a un problème dans n'importe quel organisme, on doit enquêter ça tout de suite.
if there's anyone in an organization with a problem, then yes, that should be investigated. But what you said about UNRWA was disgusting. This is the only organization that is helping out people on the ground.
UNRWA
And you
participated
painted the entire
via their
organization
employees,
with the
Jagmeet
same
Singh.
brush, calling it a
You
terrorist
awful-
organization. That is unacceptable. That is
Nail him,
hateful,
Pierre.
and it is entirely inappropriate.
Nail it,
Carney.
Pierre.
On this subject of Palestinians and international aid, would you continue to fund UNRWA?
Yes, we are in a situation where we need to have an immediate ceasefire. We need to have all the hostages returned,
Oh,
and
sorry,
we
the
need
ones
to
that are still
resume
alive.
humanitarian aid to Gaza. And at this time, we have $100 million from the government of Canada that is ready to be provided in humanitarian aid to Gaza with organizations that are working there. And that's key. And I agree with Mr. Singh. There are only a couple of groups that are working in Gaza right now.
Mr. Blanchet?
It's a very unique situation. In Canada and in Quebec, the Jewish community is victims of radical Islamists. Palestinians are currently victims of terrible violence from the Israeli regime. We have to help people in distress. There and elsewhere, it's the best way to have
I can't
international
believe this is
aid
taking
that
up
is
so
not
much
military.
of the
We need to
Canadian
allow
political
people to
discussion.
live
This is
happily
absurd.
where they live. And Palestine will not become Mar-a-Lago for Americans that just
Back
want
to
to
Trump.
chill on the coast. We have to see where the money goes. We have to see how much money is taken by Hamas. It's maybe less now, but it was huge in the past. A lot of money was taken from the Palestinians. We have to help Palestinians at the end of the day.
International aid. So the three of you on this side would continue. Mr. Poilievre, do you have an amount in your mind of how much you would cut in international aid?
We're going to target waste in all programs. We will audit to identify examples like UNRWA when they used funds for Hamas. We're also going to find other examples of international waste because,
sorry,
the decision is to protect Canadian taxpayers. We all agree that there's a lot of suffering here in Canada, and Canadians can't afford to pay their bills. So we need to find some savings in order to reduce the cost of living here in Canada.
Mr. Roy, I would like to come back to...
And we need to look at all departments in order to find those savings and protect affordability
no amount
to the question of Gaza.
Mr. Singh, I'm sorry, everyone's had their piece to say.
The situation is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see innocent people being killed. Mr. Carney, why don't you call things as they are? This is a genocide. People in Israel do deserve peace and security, but people in Palestine do as well. What is going on right now is a genocide against people in Palestine. Why won't you admit it?
The situation in Gaza, in the Middle East, is horrible. But
it's a genocide.
But I never use that word in a political way to politicize the situation.
All right.
But it's a matter of facts.
That was Mr. Carney's response. I think we've understood your question, Mr. Singh. Now, we'll be moving on to the next theme, identity and sovereignty.
This is really painful, even for someone who's
It would be
Canadian.
good to put flags
This
out on
is
our
terrible.
balconies.
Maxime Bernier is the winner of this so far.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see how proud people were. We're Canadian. We will not be Americans.
So
I think we're going to be more
a
united.
brainwashed country.
I think I haven't seen this in a long time.
I know, considering Justin Trudeau said there's no core Canadian identity.
Yes, we've
Amazing.
all seen this across Canada. All commentators have seen this. There is a wave of patriotism in Canada, but we've also seen deep divisions in the West. Alberta says it may separate. We've given 6 months to the next prime minister to meet its requests. Otherwise, there could be a crisis of national unity that is unprecedented. In Quebec, the Parti Québécois is nearing power and is promising a referendum during your term, possibly. At the end of the day, are we not as divided or as the U.S. or very divided? We'll go around the table. Mr. Poilievre first.
Unfortunately, yes, there are divisions all across Canada, all kinds of divisions. And I think that we've had a federal government that has divided everyone, pitting regions against one another and various groups against one another. Social classes pitted against one another. We need to unite Canadians. We need to unite around our common identity that includes the French language, our English language, our military, the promise of Canada that anyone who works hard can have a great life in a beautiful house on a safe street.
Thank you. Mr. Singh? Is there not division in Canada?
When I travel throughout the country, I observe great unity, great solidarity. Canadians want to defend our country. They do not want to become the 51st state.
Jesus, I can't believe the entire discussion has been.
When I talk to people about identity, people tell me our identity is taking care of one another. We have programs for that. For example, our healthcare system. We need to protect these systems and strengthen them, not cut
I'll be
them
back.
or sacrifice them. Now is the time to bring people together.
Thank you.
To get things done with our solidarity.
Thank you. Mr. Blanchet.
I think that people confuse certain things. Some people think that all Canadians should follow one single line behind the federal government, and so we only have one economy. Mr. Trump's fear, or rather the threat of Mr. Trump, has to be taken seriously, but instrumentalizing it for nation building in Canada, where Quebecers are being asked to be attached to their language as a frivolity, I can't agree with that.
Thank you. We'll go back.
Quebec's uniqueness is also economic, and we
Mr.
have to be on the
Carney,
same level
Is there
playing
a
field.
division in Canada?
Well, there's always a risk. But I think that right now, Canadians are uniting, and they want to unite. Canadians want a positive agenda. There is solidarity here. Healthcare is a right here in Canada. It's not a big business like in the United States.
You better nail him on this, Pierre.
Put a value on diversity.
You better nail him on the
here.
people dying in the ERs, waiting 2 years for a
And
doctor.
we also put
Euthanasia.
importance
You better
on
nail him,
judicial
Pierre. I mean, you're
independence.
doing better,
And,
but
you know, the potential of Canada is enormous because we're all in this together.
Thank you.
we're all in this
So
together.
open debate,
We're all
Mr.
in this
Blanchet.
together.
How can we think that Quebec, if it's on its own and independent, could be stronger to stand up to Trump and in comparison with all of Canada right now?
Does Canada need to be a province of Mexico to be allied to Mexico against the states? We're not in that debate this week, but Quebec does not need to be a Canadian province to talk of its own voice. Our economy is doing fairly well, but our economy is different to that of Canada's, and the announcements that have been made have helped Ontario Steel, Ontario Banking, the Ontario automotive industry to
Quebec
fund
Aluminum.
Western oil. That is what those were the investments made. The counter tariffs on aluminium are very harmful because people have to pay for the aluminium they sent to be processed in the States. That's then re-imported into Canada.
Like, nobody can
$2
watch
billion
this and
to the
think that
States
Canada's a serious
in
country.
countervailing tariffs. For that,
Can you imagine this entire
nothing
debate
happened.
is Trump and the crisis?
But now, $2 billion has simply been signed by Mr. Carney for the automotive industry. He sees himself as a negotiator, but he hasn't even been re-elected yet. Should Quebecers not make sure that they have a strong voice that collaborates? I've already said that we would work with Canada, but I've asked to speak to Mr. Carney, but he's never called me. He's never wanted to talk to me. I want Quebec to be at the negotiating table for a stronger
Carney.
negotiating position with Canada.
Is there also not a risk, like was the case with the automotive industry in Ontario, to this? Because this could happen to the detriment of saving other industries in our country. If we put all our eggs in the automotive basket.
Not at all. For example, our counter tariffs for the aluminum sector and steel. No, they're not bad. They're not bad
He's
at all.
not
We
finishing a
import aluminium cans from the States that comes from our
That's
mined
not
aluminium.
right at all. If I may, the counter tariffs for the aluminum sector are $30 billion. The counter tariffs, or $30 billion rather, the counter tariffs for the automotive sector, that's $8 billion. That's a huge difference because, you know, there are a number of reasons for this, but our counter tariffs, it's not just for Quebec, it's for the workers there, are much higher.
I don't know where that money came from. I don't know when the industry will get that money.
We are using the counter tariffs.
What was it, $2 billion for automotive? Immediately for them, because we're shaking in our boots when the automotive industry is at risk. But aluminium was not supported. There's no processing capacity. There's no help for temporary work losses. $2 billion for the automotive industry, but nothing for aluminium. When it's Ontario, the checks come flying, but it has to be the same for other places,
right,
especially Quebec.
That's the numbers. Your numbers are wrong.
Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah, but he's got a point when he says that the weakness in our country right now threatens our unity. Your Liberal government for 10 years has the worst track record on immigration, on housing, on inflation, on crime.
Good. Pierre's been reading my tweets.
But doesn't it embarrass you to ask Canadians for a fourth term of office after the worst Liberal record?
I've just become leader.
You've been advising Trudeau for 5 years, you liar.
Same
liar.
members of Parliament, it's the same old promises.
And I've been Prime Minister for 1 month.
Pierre,
and in that month, we have an
call
agreement
him the
with
liar
the
that he
provinces.
is.
We have an agreement with Australia. We have an agreement with France. We have an agreement with the United Kingdom. We have set up negotiations for the next Prime Minister, and that's a decision that people at home are going to make. And we've done all of that in this short time. And we've also cut the tax. We've put in place programs for workers who are most affected by this tariff war, and all that in 1 month.
Crisis, Trump. Pierre, tell him
Quebec
you're not
sent
new.
a letter
You've
with
been
5
there for
requests.
5 years.
No
you
one
globalist
responded to
whore.
it. We made requests, but we keep hearing, oh, we've spoken to provinces, things are great with Quebec, but we didn't get any response to our letter. Is it because of the final straight of the election campaign? What's going on?
Mr. Carney, you described healthcare as a right, and I agree with that. But you are talking about massive cuts to healthcare. You admitted it.
Mr. Singh, I let you speak earlier.
The long-time Liberal government House Leader, Karina Gold, agreed that there would be
Mr. Singh, cut his mic. I let you speak more earlier, but now we're nearing the end. We're talking about Quebec and French. Does Quebec have the right to defend French, even at the cost of using the notwithstanding clause upstream? Mr. Poilievre.
Yes. Quebec must defend French. It's the common language of Quebec, and I will defend French. My father was a francophone from Saskatchewan. I lost my French a little bit when I was a teenager, but I married a Quebecer. Our children speak French, and I understand why French needs to be protected. And that is why I will continue to support laws and policies that allow Quebec and the federal government to protect French all across Canada.
Using the notwithstanding clause to protect something. You're against that, Mr. Carney?
Well, there is a general question here around the use of the notwithstanding clause in a preventative way. And it's not necessarily a question just for Quebec. It's been used in Quebec, but it could also apply in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. And it has. And so the question is, do we have rights and freedoms here in Canada? Are we equal? And we need to consider the right balance. Certainly, but the use of the notwithstanding clause in a preventative way, that's a question for the Supreme Court.
Mr. Blanchet, in terms of the use of the notwithstanding clause, obviously you have no problem with that.
Jean Chrétien, on behalf of Pierre Trudeau, negotiated with the provinces, and it led to the notwithstanding clause, and this wasn't signed on by Quebec. It was tested. It's not the type of use that is in question, it's how it is used. The Supreme Court has already decided. Mr. Carney wants to turn to the Supreme Court to disagree with itself in the decision it made with Quebec.
There are
It's all funded with Quebec money.
Interveners from Quebec who have challenged this to the Supreme Court.
You are going to take Quebec taxpayer money to contest a Quebec bill that is under Quebec jurisdiction.
There is
that was
a
adopted by
Canadian
the
Charter
National
of Rights
Assembly
and
of
Freedoms.
Quebec.
Mr. Singh, on this notwithstanding clause for French.
I believe in protecting the French language. During this debate, I have tried to bring up health a few times. Mr. Roy cut me off a number of times. Look at my time on the clock. Every time I tried to bring up healthcare, I was responding directly to something that Mr. Carney said, because health is something
Now
that's
he's
important to me.
whining.
It is about identity. It's something I am very passionate about. And every time I tried to bring it up, Mr. Roy called me out and cut me off. That is not fair.
Jagmeet is the
The question of
biggest
healthcare is
loser
crucial.
in
When I talk
global
to people
politics.
on the street and ask them what is important to them, they say universal public health care. People ought to know that the other leaders on this stage tonight would cut healthcare funding. And I think that's wrong.
No.
Not now, Mr.
No,
Blanchet.
No.
The
Neither
two
Mr.
major leaders
Blanchet
have
nor
both
I have said that.
this, and I need to tell people because it's important. This is what I believe in. This is what I believe in and what the
No,
NDP
but
believes in.
That's not right to make allegations
Okay,
like that.
we talked about health earlier. I let you speak, but now we're moving on to another topic.
Yes, but now we need to bring it up in the context of
Okay.
identity. What is Canadian identity? Healthcare.
Is the
We
biggest
have to bring it
liar
up
on
in
earth,
this part of the
period,
debate.
paragraph.
Canadian identity is about
He
taking
is
care of
not
one another.
new to the Liberal Party.
We need our
period, new
universal
paragraph. He has
public
been
healthcare
advising
system. It
Trudeau
should be
for the last
strengthened. It should
5
be
years,
protected.
exclamation
We are
point.
in the
New
midst of a
paragraph. He
healthcare
owns it.
crisis. It's supposed to be an open debate, so we should be able to talk about whatever topic comes up.
There's not a lot of risk when it comes to the health of a language in
Let's
Quebec.
talk about language.
There's
Outside
healthcare
of
issues in
Quebec.
Quebec as well, and I am here to protect the healthcare system for everyone, including Quebecers.
Outside of Quebec, Mr. Singh and others, the weighting of francophones has gone from 6% in 71 to 3.5% in 2021. How will you reverse this trend? People are listening to you across Canada.
Well, first of all, we are going to increase the level of Francophone immigrants outside of Quebec. We'll increase that from 10 to 12%. Second,
Francophone,
we will
more
strengthen
immigrants.
Radio-Canada and CBC with new governance structure and new money. Mr. Poilievre wants to cut that. We are going to strengthen the telefilm industry and the Canadian Council for the Arts so that we can increase training.
All right, Mr. Poilievre.
First of all, the Conservative Party supported the federal legislation to ensure that federally regulated workplaces in Quebec follow Bill 101. We also will increase funding to allow young people to take part in French immersion for Anglophones coming from outside Quebec, and that will enrich the French language. And third, we'll make sure Quebec has more control over immigrant selection so that they can better choose those who can be franchised and integrated into the labor market and Quebec culture. That's what we want to do to protect the French language.
Mr. Poilievre, of course, your position on Radio-Canada and the CBC has created a lot of concerns. You've continued to say that you would protect Radio-Canada because it provides a service to Francophone minorities across the country, but you would abolish the CBC. How is such a thing possible?
Well, it is possible. We have news networks.
But they share the same buildings. You understand how difficult it would be.
I do understand the situation. I will protect Radio-Canada's services because there's already other French language news services. TVA is an example. So it is possible to have news service that's focused on French news services, and the CBC can just operate with its own revenues as an NGO,
And what would the
as a non-governmental organization. The principle is that the government should simply do what the market cannot do, and the market would never be able to provide exclusive French services to francophones all across Canada. So there is a role for the government to play in defending French news services. When I was a young person in Calgary, that was the only way for me to get news in French. So I would protect those services because there's a good reason to do that.
Let me translate that. Mr. Poilievre wants to get rid of Radio-Canada and
No, that's not true.
CBC. And then he would write a check to other companies so that they can provide French language services. That's the wrong thing to do. We would protect Radio-Canada and CBC. Especially in the
state-funded radio.
Of a misinformation which is undermining our democracy. I am not a francophone, but I am a francophile. I love the French language. I have fallen in love with it. It enriches our country. Having Quebec benefits all of Canada. The forward-thinking ideas that have come out of Quebec, we need Quebec. We need the French language, and we will protect them.
For the first time since 2011, there are no women here as leaders. I met with a young woman. This is a very short clip. I met with her earlier this week. Do you have a question for the leaders, something you're concerned about? In Canada, the status of women. Yeah, the status of women. You're worried about things moving backward? Yes, that there could be a rollback of women's rights by some parties. That concerns me. My question, would you commit to making sure that there are no women's rights that are rolled back? And, for example, would you push for having free contraception, as is already the case in some provinces?
These are the issues?
Is that
free
condoms? Starting with
condoms?
Mr. Poilievre.
Holy
We will
hell.
not eliminate that. We will protect women's rights. I have a message for Canadian women who are watching. We will not pass legislation that would restrict the right to abortion. That's been our policy for 20 years, and it won't change. That's a guarantee that I make to you. We will, in fact, broaden women's rights.
How can you
by
broaden?
dealing with crime against women?
There's no
Women are
criminal
often
prohibitions on
victims
abortion in Canada.
of assaulters who are released because of liberal legislation. They're released repeatedly, and that allows serious criminals to repeat offend against women. And we are going to lock those people up. We're going to lock those men up to protect women against violence.
Of course, our party believes in women's rights. We would never allow for any backsliding on that front. You brought up pharmacare. Well, it was the NDP that forced the Liberal government to bring in pharmacare. It covers now diabetes medication, but also contraceptives, and we believe that is crucial. Rights are important, but being able to access the rights is also important. We are also the only party running a candidate slate that is half women. The other parties have seen backsliding on their candidate slates in terms of diverse people and women. But for us, it's an important issue. Our candidate slate must represent the Canadian public, and that means it should be half women. For us, we will always defend women's rights and also access
Thank you, Mr. Blanchet.
to those rights.
There is no member of the Bloc Québécois that will be able to table a bill or motions that are against abortion. Preventive Maid will also not be allowed. With American influence, we are in a very difficult place for women. There are many ways
Pathological
that
buffoons.
invite women to participate in politics. We have reached parity with the Bloc Québécois. We wanted it to be 50-50, but in our current political culture, and I have many great women in my party, it's much more difficult at the federal level than in Quebec.
Yes, I think that this an aspect of politics right now, the negative politics that we're seeing, it's becoming more and more difficult to recruit women as candidates, and really any candidate. But absolutely, we defend the rights of women. all the time. But what I'm concerned about is the use of the notwithstanding clause. Not in a preventative way, but after Supreme Court judgments have been made. What does that do? It takes away Canadians' rights and freedoms. And it creates, and Mr. Poilievre has proposed this I know the situation, but this is a very dangerous development, because if we start with that, abortion could be,
Give the right to reply.
the right to abortion could eventually be next.
Mr. Poilievre, you can answer.
Mr. Carney, I said in a case where a man kills 6 people in a premeditated way and the court released that person, that means he served 4 years for each life he took. The criminal in that case will be free in 50 years. You're talking about danger. That's what's dangerous. Liberal laws that allow criminals to circulate on our streets. I will never excuse for locking murderers up.
No, I'm sorry, but you're trying to change the Canadian Constitution.
All right, gentlemen.
That's what you've proposed.
I would use Section 33 to put an end to the crime that Liberals caused with their policies.
Where will you stop?
By
Clip
stopping
that.
murderers.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Everyone knows that there should be severe penalties for murder. You're trying to sow division here. Everyone agrees on that front. If someone kills
apparently
someone,
Carney
there needs
doesn't.
to be a strong punishment. You're not
No, that's
special
not
for
true.
proposing that.
No, the other 3
Everyone
parties.
agrees.
All right, Mr. Blanchet.
Can we end this debate? This debate. This is terrible.
Mr. Carney said that I voted for the new Official Languages Act bill. The money comes from the previous bill, and the official language minority community money comes
His French
from
is terrible.
the
Carney's French is
from the
abhorrent.
bill. I was asked to bring changes. We brought the changes. We voted for, but we didn't want it to apply to Quebec because it harms Quebec.
Gentlemen,
That's it. Please end it. It's over.
you know, things didn't turn out perfectly, but Mr. Singh, you say you got 22 minutes compared to 24, 24,
And we're all dumber for that
25.
22 minutes.
Roughly equitable. I'm sorry that I did have to cut off your mic, but I'd like to wish all 4 of you good luck with the rest of the campaign.
Tomorrow's
and
gonna be
I hope
better.
that we'll see your costed plans as soon as possible so that we can see how much all of your promises will cost. And I hope that everyone listening tonight will be able to make an informed decision now. Voting starts this weekend.
And the game.
And the match? I don't know.
Who gives a sweet bugger all about hockey?
There's still a couple periods left. All right. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes this debate. See you next time. Good night.
That was painful, and I'm more personally involved. What I can tell you is that the let me bring this out here. What do we have? 800 people watching on YouTube and 1,200 watching on Rumble. That's not bad, but the interest in this, the broader cross-border interest was minimal. Yes, sir. All right, I got to go start a barbecue, people. Last year, they dumped 40,000 people into Halifax, Nova Scotia. Now the municipal parks are designated homeless encampments. Locals are losing their jobs to immigrants who have their wages subsidized by $15,000, says Chet Chisholm. Viva for Prime Minister, says it. Jay Zambonga, 78. Canada doesn't want me. How do they plan? At least the vast majority of Canada doesn't want me. I was having a discussion, like Canada doesn't even appreciate the sacrifices that some Canadians are making for freedom in Canada. And I don't think Canada deserves them. How do they plan on building all of these houses? We've had a lumber shortage since COVID-19, and its price has skyrocketed, doubled in some cases. Where are they going to get the labor? F these people. You want to know how they plan on doing it? Encryptus sent me a beautiful picture. This is what the affordable housing is going to look like in Canada. Everyone gets a pod. And by the way, the pod's going to come with a maids button on it, just in case you don't like your pod. That was painful. Thank you for watching that with me. And I'm glad I didn't have to do a real life translation in real time. Their translation, as far as I could cross compare, which I was doing, was sufficiently accurate. But there's only so many ways you can translate incomprehensible French that came out of what's-his-face's mouth. So not to make anybody jealous, I'm going to go make a barbecue now. And
I think there might be some tips in locals.
Ooh, I'll go get those. I have a barbecue. This is mildly priced steak, $21 US, USDA. It's quite fat, so it's actually a big piece of meat. I guess you can only go by it's $20 a pound, and it's a pound. So a couple of these for me, and I'll be good to go. I'm joking. That's gonna. Let's get the tips in. Oh yeah, because I'm not using Rumble Studio. Encryptus says they are awful. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com, people. Share. They are awful. The funny thing is the trans voice translated for Jughead. We have a French version if you prefer. If we played the drinking game, says Encryptus, where we all took a drink every time someone said Trump, we would be wasted already 15 minutes in. Encryptus says this is how we get 500. Oh, I referenced your joke already. How many new clients for maids after this debate? Want to bet it goes up a bit tomorrow? Well, not that the French debate is going to sway the polls, but there has been no change in the markets. So I am still 50% down on my investment for a conservative majority, which I thought would have been the outcome when this election first got started. Almost back to even on it not being a liberal majority. And I've still voted no liberal and yes, conservative for prime minister. Pierre will do much better in the English debate. It's like, it's not that it's a hard competition here. He was clearly the best of the four. Although I like Yves Blanchette. I mean, I disagree with his politics, but at least he's honest, straightforward. And I mean, it's an unfair advantage. He's the only one who's native in the language and he speaks well. He's eloquent. He's coherent. He's just a selfish provincial guy speaking for himself, wants to pull Quebec out, is looking out for Quebec's best interest, which is fine. And I mean, in that sense, I guess he's really looking out for Quebec's interests, even if it means pulling Quebec out of the Federation. But that was a disgusting, terrible debate, and Carney is disgusting and terrible. So anyways, I tweeted out a couple of highlights. See how those go. Carney is a pathological liar. I've been only prime minister for 1 month. 1 month. I've just been advising the prime minister for 5 years, but I've only been the prime minister for 1 month. Globalist. I don't know if he's renounced his passports yet. All right, guys, I'm ending it. I got to go cook some dinner, start a barbecue, make sure my kid doesn't burn the house down. Godspeed, peeps. I will see you tomorrow, 4 o'clock, and then we will do this with the English debate, and that should be more fun. Maybe I'll have a pleb come on. We'll do a co-stream. Viva pour el presidente of California. PP needs to bring up China and Brookfield. Yeah, can you imagine he went to hold the debate and didn't bring up Brookfield's? I said he did good, but he left a lot of zingers on the table. So Canada loves Viva. A portion of Canada does. I think a bigger portion does not. And I can tell you based on the own demographics of the former friends that I used to have. Yeah, the pleb would be fun. We'll see if we can do it. Okay, thank you for attending. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed that. You now know what's going on in Canada a little bit better. Godspeed, peeps. Peace.